you live from the Xfinity Mobile Studio. This is the PHLY Eagles podcast on a beautiful Monday morning. Another emergency podcast edition. Bo Wulf and Fran Duffy, presented by Bet365 and Ashley. And we are here to talk about Howie's big move. You knew he had 3 third-round picks in his coffer. One of them a projected one that will come as a compensatory pick, so he couldn't trade it yet. But with the team in a Super Bowl window, Howie Roseman is not going to let the trade deadline go by and not use one of those picks. And he has decided to send it to the Miami Dolphins, Fran, in exchange for talented, oft-injured pass rusher Jaelan Phillips. What do you make of it? What does he bring?
Yeah, I mean, certainly one of the bigger names on the market as a former first-round pick, a guy that's had a lot of success in the NFL, and he's got all the tools. I mean, this is a guy that was a former 5-star recruit, was one of the top players in the country coming out of high school. So to me, like this one, he fits the profile right now. As you mentioned, off injured, has had 2 season-ending injuries each of the last 2 seasons, had injury issues going back to his days in college as well, which we can get into. But he is a very talented player who, when healthy, like if he's at his peak, he's the best edge rusher on the Eagles right now.
Can you hear me? Not at all.
There you go. I think I got you.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So listen, as you said, the injuries.
Yep.
Torn Achilles in 2023, knee injury last season. And yet he has come back this season and has played all 9 games. You know, he played 17 games the first 2 years of his career, 8.5 sacks as a rookie. Sort of, looked like, oh, everybody, the league missed on this guy. You know, he's going to be a star, and his production has diminished a little bit since then. When you talk about the kind of player he is, Fran, at 6'5", 263, I think, and I was surprised when you told me this, but Eagles fans might be surprised to learn the way that he has been productive this season.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is that when you talk about his size at 6'5", 260, that's like prototypical defensive end size. Like line him up over tackle and just, cut him loose. And in the past, that has been where he has gotten most of his work. This year, they've gotten a little bit more creative with his usage, and they've kicked him down inside more. He's had 33 pressures this season, according to Next Gen Stats. And so going back through and watching those pressures back, over a third of those pressures have come against guards and centers, where he started the play lined up on the inside. And they've gotten really creative in terms of all the different stunts and twists. Sometimes they're just letting them loose, hey, off the ball, go and win with your quickness against those interior offensive linemen. But very similar to the conversation we had when the Eagles acquired Zadarius Smith back in late August after week 1, and similar to the conversations we've had about Brandon Graham and his usage. The Eagles have gotten better with and a little bit more voluminous with the way that they've been utilizing stunts and twists and, varying the front. I think you want to continue to do that with Jaelan Phillips. This is a guy that this year, I don't know if it's just some tweaks that they wanted to make to the system. I don't know if it's, hey, you know what, like he's not quite as explosive as he was in 2023. Now that we're 2 injuries removed, hey, we want to try and give him a little bit of a leg up where we can. But I think it would definitely behoove the Eagles to continue to use him in that way, because that is where he has had the most success this year.
Okay, let's keep focusing on the player, and then we'll pivot from that to sort of the resource allocation and what you make of this from a Howie Roseman standpoint. But as Jaelan Phillips as a player, this team is also struggling in run defense. How does he look to you as a run defender?
He's solid, and he's always been regarded as a solid player. I don't think when you think of like Brandon Graham at his best, you're talking like 2018, 2019, 2020 Brandon Graham, where he's like the tone setter and resetting the line of scrimmage. Like he's not to that level, but he's a solid run defender. Like he it's not a weakness in his game whatsoever. He's going to hold the point against tight ends. He's going to hold the point against tackles. The big thing that did stand out, just kind of going through some of the next gen numbers, he's got more missed tackles in the run game this year than really like the rest of his career combined. Like he's had trouble finishing, and that has been kind of a resounding theme as well going through this year. And I think there's something we can make of that from a health standpoint, like him coming off the injury. I do think he's a little bit tight, and some of that tightness, we've talked about that in the past when it comes to draft prospects. Guys that are a little bit stiff, sometimes they can struggle to like break down and finish as a tackler, and so some of that has popped up here this year.
And then back to him as a pass rusher, just in terms of the production, it's a little bit pressure heavy as opposed to like actual quarterback hit heavy. I think if you sort by like 100 pass rush snaps just this year, he's 8th in pressure rate, but 44th in quarterback hit rate, which is below Jalyx Hunt, below Jalen Carter, some of those guys. So you see anything that would explain that?
Yeah, a lot of his pressures this year were, him basically like flashing in front of the quarterback's face and forcing him off his spot, or flashing behind the quarterback and forcing the quarterback to step up in the pocket. And that goes back to kind of like the lower body stiffness that I was pointing to a little bit. Again, coming off an ACL, coming off the Achilles, two straight years with those injuries. I think he is just, still kind of rounding into form in that way. So I think that can explain some of that. They've been really good with like their complementary rushes, where like they understand, okay, there was a sack that he had where it's like, all right, he's got a two-way go against the tackle. He's going to work inside, and now you've got the defensive tackle looping outside. I've talked with Chris Long about this in the past in terms of like defensive linemen complementing each other on the rush, where it's like, hey, I'm going to get the free reign. You play off of me. And so I do think that they have an understanding, hey, I'm going to create some havoc here, and then you clean it up. He's been that kind of a player. But yeah, the when you look at like pressure rate stuff, it's all pretty high. The sack rate is low. The QB hit rate is low. But that's why there are a lot of people that will say like, hey, like pressure rate is a little bit stickier. Obviously, it's a wider sample because it's a little bit more generous in terms of how often you guys how you get credited with the pressure. But look, I went through and I just through next gen stats, all the edge rushers with at least 175 pass rush snaps this year. He's 5th in pressure rate. He's 5th in average time to pressure. So he's getting home quickly. So that's something that has plagued the Eagle. They don't have anybody right now that can win quickly. So I think that's a good sign as well.
But if he's coming from the inside, that explains it a little bit.
A little bit.
I mean, this was a player who I think, if I can speak freely, entering the draft, you were a little bit lower on than consensus, right? And part of that, I think, was the calculation of he retired because of the concussions. Like, this is a tough bet to make. He has been injured a lot. Do you view him as a difference maker for this defense?
Yeah, I think that, and there was some like maturity stuff when he was in college as well. Again, this was a big time recruit, goes to UCLA. You mentioned he had reportedly 3 concussions that forced him to step away from the game briefly. And so he briefly retired, and then it ends up resurfacing at Miami. And he has that huge year for the Hurricanes, declares for the draft, and goes in the first round. So there was certainly a little bit of boom bust with the profile. Everybody I've talked to in Miami that has covered the Dolphins and been in that organization, I actually messaged with somebody in that building this morning, and they were like, yeah, like he's been awesome. So I think from a maturity standpoint, he has certainly grown up a lot since the pre-draft process, and he's a guy that I think you can rely on. I don't think that he's someone that if you were worried, like you're trading for a guy mid-season, like is he going to be able to kind of incorporate into the fabric of the locker room and the culture? Like, he should step right in and be a fit from what I understand. And also, too, again, from what I gather, Vic Fangio is like on board with this move. This guy that coached Jaelan Phillips in Miami in 2023, and Vic Fangio was very much on board with this acquisition, from what I understand.
Right. Anytime we were talking about a defender on the Dolphins, we were going to say, that those guys didn't like Vic. You wonder how that relationship goes. Obviously, Vic is aware of those things, and to hear that Vic was still pushing for that tells you where that stands. What do you make of this from Howie Roseman's perspective, Fran? If you think that, okay, Howie knew all along he was going to trade a 3rd-round pick. He was going to try. His priority was to try to help the pass defense. In lieu of being able to find a corner, he adds a player in Jaelan Phillips. What do you make of that decision?
I think that, look, they go out and they get 2 DBs in a 3-day stretch with Michael Carter and with Jair Alexander. Then you add your blue chip talent with Jaelan Phillips. I think that makes sense. And honestly, like when you look at the way that the weekend kind of laid out this past weekend in the NFL, and you see what happened in the division, and you see Detroit lose, you see Green Bay lose. I completely understand this from Howie's standpoint, where it's like, hey, you know what? Like, we have this window. We're keeping AJ Brown. Let's push these chips in. Let's make another run at it, guys. And I think that this certainly makes a lot of sense from that angle. I think that from a like supply demand standpoint, there was a little bit more of a supply for pure edge rush than pure outside corner help. And so you're going to kind of play the hand that you're dealt.
I will say it reminds me a lot of the Golden Tate trade.
Okay.
Not just because one of the co-hosts was in Europe when it happened. Listen, I think the likelihood is that in May we're going to look back and say, man, like we really could have used that third round pick that we spent on Jaelan Phillips. However, you have to understand, for the reasons you're saying, this is a team in a Super Bowl window. You have a pick to spend. Like I don't love playing we're going to get a comp pick back anyway because that means you can't sign free agents and there's no guarantee of that. But given what this team needs, it makes sense. Now we should say Jaelan Phillips is in the final year of his rookie contract. The Dolphins had picked up his 5th-year option. Reports are that the Dolphins picked up a bunch of cash to make this happen, to get a better draft pick in response. It's also the Eagles draft pick. I think Jimmy Kemsky reported, not the Jets 3rd-round draft pick that they own. So it's a later 3rd-round pick. And then they're also going to get the comp pick later. It is a reasonable deal to make. I think it is unlikely to turn out like equal value, but you get it for a team that thinks that they have a chance to win it all.
Exactly. This is one of those like calculated risks you try and take where you're going to gamble on a guy with talent that has familiarity with the scheme. There's multiple coaches on the staff that have been around him. So I think that from that end of it, you're making your best educated guess, and again, trying to take advantage of the window at your disposal to go for another championship. EJ
Smith says in the chat, "Je suis désolé." We have a super chat from Pat Phoenix, our friend, who says, Jaelan Phillips. And then another super chat from Dave, who says, I understand the hesitancy, but overall, I'm hyped by this move. At worst, he wants to do the best he can to boost his next contract, and the Eagles get a comp pick back.
Yeah, and look, this is, again, the film, I was very interested going into the film because I hadn't studied the Miami defense really much at all this season. So I was like, all right, I'm going in complete, because you don't want to just lean on your priors with a player like this, a profile like this. With these 2 injuries, like I didn't know what I was walking into. And I think the film was pretty encouraging. He did not look like a guy that was, like completely washed and, you couldn't get off the ball. Like the film was solid.
All right. This conversation will continue. Tap into Anthony's show. I'm going to go on right after we're finished here. Then Fran's going to go on later. So we get all kinds of Jaelan Phillips discussions here on PHLY. And then at 2:00, you've got Jamie and Rich with the regular PHLY Eagles show. I think it's possible you might be checking on that.
I'm jumping on with them as well. Yep.
So exciting day for the Eagles. We got a lot to talk about. Deadline's tomorrow at 4:00. I do think that now Howie is done.
You think he's done? You think you don't have another one in you? Tonight, they will say like right around bedtime, right around right around when little kids are going to bed. You think they'll have another one?
Well, you're probably right. Yeah, you got us right in the middle of morning drop off. This one I think is okay. I will say there's a bit of a roster crunch right now. No, just numbers wise. So I wouldn't be surprised if they flip something to get like a late round pick. It's possible.
You think someone's trading for Adoree Jackson?
Like Keely Ringo.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. It's possible. All right. A big move from Howie Roseman. Jaelan Phillips is here. We got a lot to talk about the rest of the week on PHLY. But that's the scoop for now. For Fran Duffy, I'm Bo Wulf. We'll talk to you soon. And as always, we love you.
We all silly like the mayor.